What do you do when your wife wraps her arms around her ex on the dance floor, presses close in front of you, and then tells everyone you overreacted for walking away? How long can you stay calm while her friends, her family, and even your own child are fed a story where you are the jealous, controlling villain, and she is the innocent victim just having fun? And what happens when, after months of quiet note-taking and patient planning, she is finally handed legal papers in a crowded lobby and the truth lands louder than her music ever did? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Larkin Hale, and everyone thinks I left my wife because I am jealous of her past. That is the story she tells, and most people believe it. They see short party clips on their phones where she laughs with her ex on the dance floor and I walk away. They see her posts about men who can't handle a confident woman and husbands who punish their wives for old history. They saw me as the villain who could not take a joke. What they do not see is how close she danced with him, how her hands rested on his neck, how his hands pressed into her back while she looked at me over his shoulder. They do not see the way she kept him in our life, always as just a friend, always one message away. They do not see our daughter watching or the quiet nights after when I slept in the guest room and she called me controlling for not laughing along. I did not smash anything. I did not hit anyone. I did not scream. I watched, I wrote things down, and in the end, I chose not to stay. And I chose to do it properly. The night that changed everything started like any other fun night she planned. Sienna stood in our kitchen with her phone in her hand and a half-open wardrobe behind her. She scrolled through old college photos from Nora's feed and reminded me that the reunion party would be good for us. She said I needed to show everyone I was not the boring husband who stayed home. She also said Ethan might be there, but that it would be no big deal because he was only part of her past. I told her I would drive, I would come, and I would not start any scenes. She smiled in a way that felt like a test, not a thank you. Our daughter Mila sat at the table drawing, watching Sienna do her makeup like it was a show, and watching me like I was the quiet extra in the background. In the stairwell of our building, Sienna checked her reflection in the small mirror by the fire door. She adjusted her dress, then reminded me not to look weird if I saw her talking to Ethan. I said I would behave. She said she hoped so because she was tired of having to apologize for her past. I thought about answering, thought about telling her that a past is one thing and a live performance of that past in front of me is another, but I swallowed the words. I held the door open, we walked to the car, and I drove us into the city lights. The rooftop event space was crowded when we arrived. Music pulsed through the glass, and groups of people clustered around high tables with drinks and phones in their hands. Nora greeted Sienna with loud laughter and pulled her into a half-hug, half-spin that made her dress flare. I stood slightly behind, accepting a short hello before being forgotten. Sienna slipped into the circle of old friends like she had never left. They asked about her work, about her content, about how married life was, and she said it was good, mostly, with a small look in my direction that made them all laugh. For a while, I stayed near the wall, watching. People moved in waves, shifting from the bar to the dance floor and back again. Sienna checked her phone often, posting quick clips to her story, showing that she was back with the old crew. I saw her type Ethan's name once, then delete it, then type something else. When Ethan finally arrived, the energy around her shifted. He was taller than I remembered from photos, dressed like he had walked in from a music video that never aired. He hugged her a little too long for someone who was supposed to belong to her past. She introduced me as the husband in a light tone, then turned her body toward Ethan again. The first dance between them was not the one that broke me. At first they danced like old friends, with space between them, laughing at shared memories I did not know. People cheered, phones lifted for photos. I stayed where I was, near a support column, a safe distance away. Sienna glanced over my shoulder once, as if checking my reaction. I kept my face calm. I thought, maybe this is what I have to accept if I want peace. Then the song changed, the crowd thinned slightly, and Ethan stepped closer. Sienna moved with him like she remembered every line of his body. Her arms slid around his neck, his hands settled low on her back, and their bodies fit together with no space left between. She leaned in, laughed into his ear, and then looked directly at me over his shoulder with a small smile that was not friendly. Around them, people shouted and whistled. A phone close by started recording, the red light reflecting in their eyes. To anyone watching, it looked like a couple reunited. To everyone who knew she was married, it looked like a joke I was supposed to laugh at. I did not shout. I did not step between them. I stood there long enough to make sure I was not imagining it, long enough to see Ethan's hand slide over parts of her body that should have been private between us, long enough to know this was not just dancing in any honest sense. Then I stepped back. 3 steps, slow and controlled. I turned away from the dance floor and walked toward the far end of the room where the balcony doors stood open, letting cold air in. The beat of the song followed me, dull and heavy in my chest. On the balcony, the city lights spread out around us. A few people smoked and laughed. I leaned on the railing and focused on my breathing. I told myself I needed to think in straight lines, not in sharp bursts of anger. I checked the time on my phone and noted it without fully knowing why. After a few minutes, I saw Sienna and Ethan move toward the smoking area through the glass, still close, still in their own bubble. I watched them disappear behind a small group and did not follow. I did not know then exactly how I would use these minutes later, only that they were important. At some point, I understood that nothing good would happen if I stayed. If I tried to pull her away, I would become the scene. If I confronted him, I would become the threat. So I went back inside, told Nora in a low voice that I was leaving early because I did not feel well, and walked past the dance floor without searching for Sienna's face. The music swallowed my exit. No one stopped me. On the way out, I pressed the elevator button with a steady hand and walked out into the night air, alone. The drive home felt both slow and fast. My hands stayed tight on the wheel, my head filled with flashes of her hands on his neck, his hands on her back, her eyes on me. At a red light, I opened my phone and created a new calendar reminder for the next week. I named it City Park, 6 p.m., nothing more. It looked harmless, but it drew a line in my mind. When I reached our building, I sat in the parked car for a minute. The street was quiet, the stairwell lights dim behind the glass door. I went upstairs and unlocked the apartment. Inside, the air was still. I hung my keys on the hook, walked to the small home office nook, and opened my laptop. The screen came to life with a simple desktop. I opened a spreadsheet file I had used before, the one with initials and dates for smaller things I had tried to forget. In a new row, I entered the date, the reunion party, the dance with Ethan, the time I left, and the fact that I left without shouting. No opinions, no insults, just a line of facts. I saved the file. I opened a message thread to myself and titled it Follow Up. I wrote one short summary of the night and sent it. A little later, I heard Sienna's key in the lock, then her laughter in the hallway as she finished a message to someone, probably telling them how I had stormed off. I minimized the spreadsheet and closed my phone. As the bedroom door latch clicked and her steps moved away, the screen of my phone lit up on the desk with the preview of the message thread named Follow Up. For a second, the glow of the notification and the sound of the closing door overlapped, and I understood that from this night on, I would not fight her story with louder words. I would fight it with quiet, careful records that could not dance. The morning after the reunion, the kitchen looked the same, but nothing felt like before. The coffee machine hummed, the cereal box leaned open on the table, and Mila sat in her pajamas, drawing a cat with 2 big eyes. Sienna stood near the counter with her phone in her hand, screen tilted away from me. She smiled at something and typed fast with her thumb. When I walked in, she said I had left her alone at her own party, and made it sound like a joke she had told many times already. She said people were already messaging her, asking if I was always that sensitive. She did not say anything about how close she had been to Ethan's body while she watched my face over his shoulder. She put her phone on speaker for a moment while she poured coffee. Nora's voice filled the kitchen. Nora said people could not believe I had stormed out because my wife had danced with an old friend. Sienna agreed with a short laugh and said I had a lot of work to do on trust. I listened, quiet, holding my mug. Mila looked up from her drawing and asked if everyone was mad at Dad now. Sienna told her not to worry and said we were just having silly grown-up drama. She did not look at me when she said it. I rinsed my mug and told Mila to grab her backpack for school. On the way to drop Mila off, Sienna scrolled through her phone again. A small chime sounded with each new notification. She said someone had tagged her in a video from the party and turned the screen to show Mila for a second, not me. I saw a quick flash of her and Ethan on the dance floor, her arms around his neck, his hands on her back. Then she pulled the phone away and said she did not want to upset me before work. I answered that I was fine. The word tasted wrong, but it kept the car quiet. After I left Mila at school, I drove to my office. The open-plan floor was already busy when I arrived. Screens glowed, chairs creaked, the usual buzz of keyboards and soft talk filled the air. I tried to sink into the rhythm of tickets and emails, but I could feel eyes on me in a way I had not before. Around 10, a coworker called my name and waved me over. He said he wanted to show me something funny from the reunion. On his screen, the video of Sienna and Ethan played full size. The caption said, "When your ex still has better moves than your husband." My coworker laughed and said I must be pretty secure to let that happen. I answered that my wife liked to dance. That was all. As soon as I got back to my own desk, I opened my email and asked him to send me the video so I could show Sienna later. When the message arrived, I downloaded the file quietly and saved it in a folder with a plain name. Then I forwarded it to a backup email account only I knew about. I took screenshots of the caption and comments and saved them too. For a moment, I opened a spreadsheet on my work laptop that held only initials and dates. I added a line about the video, the caption, the time it was shown to me at the office. When someone walked past my desk, I minimized the window and opened a help desk ticket like nothing was unusual. Later in the morning, my manager, Marco, stopped by and asked if I had a minute to talk. We went into a small meeting room with glass walls and a round table. He said my work had been off lately, that I seemed distracted, slower to respond, less present. He asked if everything was okay at home. I told him there had been some personal tension, but that I was handling it. He said he understood and suggested I block some time in my calendar as meeting personal if I needed space during the week. He said it was better to plan than to let things bleed into all my work hours. I thanked him and said I would do that. Back at my desk, I opened my calendar and created a small recurring event labeled Meeting, personal with a time in the early evening, just once a week. It looked like any other block of color on the calendar, nothing special, but it made a small shape in my mind. After that, I opened a private browser window and searched for storage options. The page showed cloud services, external drives, backup plans. I read for a few minutes, then closed the window when a colleague came by to ask about a printer. On the way home after work, I stopped at the supermarket. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything feel a little unreal. I picked up milk, bread, and a few things for dinner and got in line. In front of me, one of Sienna's friends from her social circle turned around and recognized me. She smiled in a half-sorry, half-amused way and asked if I was over the whole dance drama yet. Before I could answer, she repeated Sienna's version to my face that I had walked out like a teenager because my wife had danced with her ex for 30 seconds. She said everyone knew it was just harmless fun. I said, in a calm voice, that I had seen them dance longer than that and closer than that, and that I had left to avoid making a scene. She blinked and said Sienna had told her it was a short joke dance and that I had gone home early because I could not handle her past. Then she changed the subject to some new bar Nora wanted to visit. When the cashier asked if we were together, she laughed and said she only knew my wife from the fun nights. I paid for my groceries, carried the bags to the car, and felt the story settle on me like a coat I had never chosen. Back at our building, the stairwell smelled faintly of dust and someone's dinner. Inside the apartment, I put the groceries away in the kitchen. On the counter, 2 mugs stood apart, one with a faint lipstick ring, one plain. I opened the small home office nook and sat at the laptop again. I moved the party video from my email onto a USB stick, a small one I labeled only with the date in tiny letters. I lifted the folder marked taxes from the shelf and taped the USB under the back cover where no one would feel it unless they knew it was there. In the hallway by the door, an envelope sat in the outbox, unsealed and blank on the front. I took a simple sheet of paper, printed a list of dates and short notes from my spreadsheet, only times and places, no accusations, and folded it once. I slipped it inside the envelope and closed the flap. It looked like any other piece of mail now, but I knew it was not. On the wall nearby hung our planner. I looked at the red circle around a date the next month and ran my thumb lightly over it. A little later, Sienna came home in a bright mood. She said people loved her reunion posts, that everyone thought the dance video was hilarious, and that many wives would kill for that kind of engagement. She said I needed to laugh at myself and stop acting like a victim. I did not correct her. After dinner, Mila went to her room, and Sienna took her phone to the couch. I went back to the office nook. On my phone, I opened the message thread titled Follow Up and added new lines about the office, the video, Marco's concern, and the supermarket line. Just as I pressed send, my phone buzzed again. A group chat notification appeared at the top of the screen, showing a fresh tagged photo of Sienna and Ethan laughing together under colored lights. At almost the same moment, Marco's calendar invite popped up confirming our next quick check-in. 2 small windows of light overlapped on the screen. I stared at them and understood that her story was now traveling faster and wider than my voice could ever reach. But my quiet record was growing too, 1 saved clip and 1 date at a time. The dinner at the family restaurant was supposed to be about someone else's birthday, but I knew before we even left the apartment that the real show would be about us. Sienna stood in front of the mirror, fixing her hair, and said it would be good to show the family we're fine. She said people needed to see we could laugh about the party now. I noticed she did not mention Ethan by name, but I could feel him in every word. Mila sat on the edge of our bed, swinging her legs, asking if there would be cake. I said yes, there would be cake. I did not say there would also be a new performance of the dance I was still trying to process in private. When we arrived, the restaurant was already full of noise and light. Our group had a long table near the back, decorated with balloons and a stack of paper menus. Peter and Lorraine were there, sitting near the center, talking to relatives I did not know well. Chloe waved us over and pulled Mila into a seat beside her. Sienna arrived like a small storm, hugging everyone, kissing cheeks, making sure people saw her, heard her, felt her energy. I helped Mila with her coat and took a place near the end of the table, where the sound from the speakers was slightly softer. From there I could see most faces, which meant most faces could see me. At first, the conversation was normal. People asked about work, about school, about traffic. Plates of appetizers arrived and disappeared. I cut Mila's food into small pieces and listened while Chloe told her a story about a dog she had seen. Sienna laughed loudly at something Nora had sent to her phone and passed it around. I could hear small parts of their talk. Reunion, views, that dance. It was only a matter of time before someone asked the question directly. It did not take long. One of Sienna's cousins asked her how the party had been, saying he had seen a clip online. Sienna smiled as if she had been waiting for the line all night. She said the party was amazing, and that some people could not handle seeing a woman dance with her ex. She tilted her head toward me without actually turning, making sure the whole table understood who some people meant. There was a wave of laughter. Peter leaned forward and asked what had happened exactly, pretending he did not already know. Sienna launched into her story, smooth and dramatic, about how she had danced for maybe half a minute with Ethan, how I had stormed off, how she had been left alone at her own party. As she spoke, Chloe unlocked her phone and opened the video. The screen lit up with spinning colors and two bodies pressed together, Sienna and Ethan. The caption said something about old flames and still having it. The clip did not look like a 30-second joke. It looked like what it was, a slow, close dance between two people with a history full of private language. But the way Sienna told it, she was just a woman punished for having a past, and I was a man who could not handle it. The cousins laughed. Someone nudged Peter and said he must be proud to have such a free-spirited daughter. I sat there with my hands around my water glass, listening. I did not interrupt her. I did not tell them that I had stood in that room and watched her look at me while she pressed herself into another man. When she said I had left without a word, I remembered telling Nora I was leaving because I felt unwell, but I did not correct Sienna. I just took a slow sip of water and watched faces. Some people were amused by her story. A few looked uncomfortable. Chloe's smile faded when she watched the clip a second time, as if she was seeing more on the screen now that the first wave of laughter had passed. At one point, I got up to take Mila to the restroom. On the way back, Chloe walked beside me, her phone in her hand. She asked in a low voice if it was true that I had just walked out like that. I told her I had watched Sienna dance very closely with Ethan, that I had not wanted to make a scene in front of everyone, and that I had gone home to keep things from getting worse. I kept my voice even, no blame in my tone. Chloe frowned slightly and looked at the floor. She said Sienna had told her a shorter, cleaner version. Then someone called her name from the table, and she went back to her seat. It was not a full shift, but it was a small crack in the story I was trapped inside. When dessert arrived, the noise at the table rose higher. The staff brought out a cake with a sparkler, and everyone sang. After the candles were blown, Peter stood up with his glass in his hand and tapped it with his spoon. The sound cut through the room like a bell. He said he wanted to toast the birthday, but then he turned the words towards Sienna. He said he was proud to have a daughter who never apologized for who she used to be, and who did not let any man clip her wings. A cousin shouted, "Even the husband?" and everyone laughed. Peter smiled and said something about men needing to grow up and trust the woman they chose. He did not say my name, but he did not have to. Every head at the table turned in my direction for a moment. I lifted my glass and took a sip of water, keeping my face neutral. While this was happening, I noticed two small things. Chloe's phone, still on the table, was recording the toast for a story later, and in my pocket, my own phone vibrated softly with a notification I did not check yet. Two different records forming at the same time, one loud, one quiet. After the toast, the conversation broke apart again. People went back to talking about work and children and travel, but the taste of those words stayed with me. When we finally left the restaurant, Mila was sleepy and leaned against my side. In the car, she asked why everyone had laughed when her grandfather talked about men who need to grow up. She wanted to know if he had been talking about me. Sienna said he was just joking. I said nothing. I focused on the road, drove us home, and carried Mila to her room when we arrived. In our apartment, Sienna went straight to the bedroom with her phone, probably to see how the photos and videos from the night came out. I walked to the kitchen. Two mugs stood on separate sides of the counter again, like a quiet diagram of our marriage. I rinsed mine and then went to the small nook with the laptop. I opened my cloud storage and saw a small message in the corner of the screen. File uploaded successfully. Earlier, before dinner, I had backed up the reunion clips and screenshots. Now I added a short voice note to my recording app, summarizing the dinner. The story Sienna told, the clip, the toast, the way people laughed. The app beeped softly when I saved it. Before going to the guest room, I opened the message thread titled Follow Up on my phone and typed a few lines about the restaurant. Date, location, Sienna's version, Peter's toast, Chloe's reaction. No extra words. Just facts. As I pressed send, my phone lit up again with a new notification from social media. A family member had tagged me in a photo from the dinner. In the picture, Peter stood raising his glass mid-toast. Sienna laughed beside him, and my face was barely visible at the edge of the frame, expression calm and distant. The flash from the camera had caught me in that moment, exactly as I had chosen to be, silent, steady, watching. I stared at the image and understood that while they captured me as the quiet villain in their story tonight, I was capturing them too, in a different way, one that would not need their approval to be believed later. The park became our neutral ground, a place where nothing ugly was supposed to follow us, but it did anyway. One Saturday morning, I took Mila there alone, hoping fresh air and the sound of children would clear some of the noise from my head. She ran straight to the swings, still small enough to fit in the child seat, and told me to push higher, but not too high. I stood behind her, hands on the chains, watching her hair fly back and forth, watching the other parents talk on benches. For a few minutes, it felt like we were just a normal father and daughter in a normal weekend scene. Then Sienna arrived. She walked across the grass wearing the kind of clothes she usually saved for nights out, not the park. Her perfume reached us before she did. She waved like everything was easy. Mila squealed and asked if she wanted to see the drawing she had made at school. Sienna said she was just passing by before meeting a friend for coffee and had a few minutes. I watched her shoes. They were not coffee shoes. They were the shoes she wore when she wanted attention. A neighbor from our building sat on the nearest bench. She called out and said she had seen Sienna the night before near a bar across town, with that same guy from the video. She said it casually, like mentioning the weather. Sienna gave a light laugh and said he was just an old friend and that everything was totally harmless, adding that I knew that, of course. That last part was not true, but she said it as if speaking a fact into the air could make it real. The neighbor nodded, smiled at me like I was supposed to confirm it, then went back to scrolling her phone. I pushed the swing again. Mila looked over her shoulder at me and asked why Mom still saw her ex if he was from before Dad. I said some adults did not always draw clear lines and that it could be confusing, but none of it was her fault. The words sounded thin even as I spoke them. Later that week, Sienna told me her parents wanted us to come over for dinner to clear the air. She said her father was worried about my attitude, like he was the principal and I was a student. We went because Mila wanted to see her grandparents and because I had started to understand it was important to let conversations happen in front of people who might have to choose what to believe. The Vega house looked the same as always from the outside. Neat lawn, trimmed hedge, a little wind chime at the door. Inside, the living room felt different as soon as I stepped in. The television was off, the coffee table was clear, and Peter's jaw was already set in the way it gets when he plans to deliver a speech. We sat, and it did not take long. Peter started with comments about how hard marriage can be and how young people give up too fast, but he quickly shifted to a familiar point. Every woman has a past, and a man needs to respect that if he wants a future with her. He talked about how I had embarrassed Sienna by leaving the reunion party, how I was making a big deal out of dancing, how I was fixated on old history instead of focusing on our child. He said Sienna had told him I was writing things down, keeping lists and saving screenshots, as if that alone proved something dark about me. Lorraine sat beside him, twisting a napkin in her hands, nodding at random points. When there was space to speak, I answered quietly. I said I was not jealous of a past that was over. I was concerned about behavior that kept repeating in front of me and in front of our daughter. I said I had watched Sienna dance with Ethan in a way that would have hurt any husband. I said I had walked away to avoid a scene, because shouting or grabbing someone on a dance floor was not who I was. I did not mention spreadsheets or USB sticks. I did not show my phone. I only used words and kept them as flat as I could. Peter shook his head. He said I was overreacting, that I was holding on to a moment and turning it into a court case in my mind. He said if I really loved Sienna, I would delete any evidence I had and stop talking about it. He called my need to write things down cold and unromantic. Sienna sat on the other couch, her body angled slightly away from me. She said she felt policed, that she could not even talk to her ex without me building a file in my head. She said she was tired of being punished for something that had happened for a few songs in a room full of people. Lorraine finally spoke and asked if I would consider getting help for my trust issues, as if my main problem was failing to applaud while my wife treated our marriage like a stage prop. She said it would be better for Mila if I learned to let go of small things. In the doorway, Chloe lingered. She had her phone in her hand but was not filming. She looked between us like she was trying to line up two different stories. When Peter stepped out to answer a call and Lorraine went to check on dinner, Chloe moved closer and asked in a low voice if it was true I was writing down dates. I said yes, that I wrote things down when I was confused, so I would not twist memories later to make myself more right or more wrong. She seemed surprised by that answer, like she had expected me to deny everything. She said she did not like the dance clip, but that Sienna felt attacked. I said Sienna might feel attacked by my memory, but the clip attacked itself. Chloe did not argue. She only said she wished all of us would stop giving people so much material. After dinner, which passed in a strained attempt at normal conversation, Peter called me back into the living room alone while Sienna helped in the kitchen. He said he wanted no bad blood, but he was clear. He said I had to decide whether I was in or out. If I stayed, he expected me to drop this drama, stop talking about Ethan, stop walking out of rooms, stop keeping track of things Sienna did. He said that if I could not, Sienna would have to think about separating for her mental health and for Mila's peace. It was an ultimatum delivered as fatherly advice. I listened and said I heard his concerns. I did not give him the answer he wanted. When we got home, the apartment felt too small for the amount of tension we carried through the door. Mila went straight to her room with the small toy her grandmother had given her. Sienna said she was exhausted and went to the bedroom. I stayed in the hallway for a moment, staring at the wall planner. The red circle stood out in the middle of the month like a warning light. I took a sticky note from the small stack on the shelf and wrote two simple words: "Bring forms." I placed it near the red circle, not touching it but close enough to remind me of what that day meant. In the home office nook, I opened my laptop. The desktop was clear except for a few folders. Two were named Archive A and Archive B. I opened them, checked that the clips, screenshots, and audio notes were synced correctly, then closed them again. A small message popped up in the corner. File uploaded successfully. In my spreadsheet of initials and dates, I added a new entry for the Vega house. Park comment, Mila's question, Peter's ultimatum. On my phone, I opened the thread labeled follow-up and typed a few flat lines about the night. Then I set another calendar reminder titled Riverside 4:30 p.m., a week before the red circle, no description, just time and place. Later, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, listening to the sound of the shower from the other room. My phone buzzed in my hand. An alarm I had set earlier flashed across the screen. Paper drop with a time on the red circled day. I cleared it before the sound finished. As I lowered the phone, Mila appeared in the doorway of the guest room, holding her stuffed animal. She looked from my bed to the closed door of the main bedroom, then to the planner on the wall in the hall. She asked if the day with the red circle was when I was going to move out. Her voice stayed soft, but the words felt heavy enough to split the floor. I told her we were still figuring things out and that no matter what, she would have a home with me. She nodded slowly, not comforted, just absorbing. Behind her, on the wall, the sticky note reading "Bring forms" fluttered slightly from the draft. The alarm name paper drop still echoed in my mind. Two quiet signals, one simple question, and one clear answer in my chest. Whatever happened next could not be another performance. It had to be something written, signed, and solid enough to carry her weight. The weeks after that conversation at her parents' house felt like walking across a floor full of small, sharp objects and bare feet. On the surface, nothing big changed. We still woke up in the same apartment, still packed lunches, still drove Mila to school, but inside every routine there was a crack now. I could feel it when I poured coffee in the morning and saw Sienna's mug on one side of the counter and mine on the other, like 2 points on a map that used to be closer. She moved through our kitchen with her phone in her hand more than ever, telling friends that her father had spoken to me and that things were on notice now. She spoke as if she was the one giving me one last chance, not the other way around. One evening, the school sent a message about a small event in the community center hall. Student art displays, a short talk, some juice and cookies. Mila was excited and wanted both of us there. Sienna said it would be good PR to show we were united parents. I heard the joke in her voice and heard the truth behind it too. We went because saying no to our daughter's face was never an option for me. The hall was bright and echoing, full of children running in small circles and parents standing by walls with paper cups. Mila grabbed each of us by the hand and dragged us from drawing to drawing, proud of each one. For a little while, we were just 3 people looking at crayon suns and stick figures. Then Sienna's small audience formed. She drifted toward a group of parents she liked to call her school crew. I stayed a few steps away, close enough to reach Mila, far enough not to be pulled into the circle. I heard my name, then laughter. Sienna told them that things had been tense since the reunion, that I was still writing everything down, that sometimes she felt like she lived with an internal affairs department instead of a husband. The parents laughed the way people laugh when they want to seem supportive without thinking too hard. One of the mothers looked at me with a mix of pity and curiosity, as if she expected to see a wild man in restraints, not a quiet one holding his daughter's jacket. Sienna said in a loud, playful tone that some men could not handle their wives being friends with their exes and that she refused to live like a prisoner. She did not say anything about neighbors at parks or late nights out of sight. During the teacher's talk, I stood at the edge of the room. Mila stood in front of me, leaning back against my legs. I kept my hands on her shoulders and tried to focus on the words about school projects. A father I recognized from pickup slid closer and spoke without looking directly at me. He said he had seen Sienna and Ethan near a bar again, late, more than once. He sounded uncomfortable, like he wished he did not have to say it, but felt he should. I nodded and thanked him, nothing more. I did not ask for details. The outline was enough. He merged back into the crowd, and the talk moved on. Over by the juice table, Sienna laughed loudly at something on her phone, probably another reaction to the dance clip that refused to die. The next day, the school pickup area turned into a quiet stage again. Cars lined up, children poured out in waves. I arrived early, as usual, engine off, watching the door. Mila came out carrying a drawing rolled in her hand. Before she reached my car, another car pulled up, one I already knew too well. Ethan got out from the driver's seat and walked around to open the passenger door. Sienna stepped out, adjusting her hair, laughing at something he had said. A few parents at the gate looked from them to me, then back again. Sienna walked over with a bright face and said she had grabbed a ride because she hated wasting gas, and that it was no big deal. She told Mila to get her things because they would take her home. I felt every eye on me in that moment. I did not raise my voice. I did not look at Ethan for more than a second. I told Mila she would ride with me today because that was the plan and that we would see Mom at home. Mila hesitated for a second, confusion in her eyes, then came toward our car because she trusted the steadiness in my voice. Sienna rolled her eyes and said I was making a scene over nothing. The only sound around us was the shuffle of children and the idle engines. Ethan went back to his car without a word and drove away. I watched the license plate in my mirror and recorded it silently in my mind. That evening, the apartment air felt packed with heavy, invisible things. At dinner, Sienna complained that I was trying to control everything, that I was turning rides and dances into crimes, that she was one step away from walking away, if I did not drop this obsession. She said all of it in front of Mila, who stared at her plate and pushed food around. I answered only once, choosing each word. I said that I cared about what our daughter saw and about how we respected our marriage in public. I did not mention Ethan's name. I did not refer to files or notes. After dinner, Mila went to do homework, and Sienna took her phone to the bedroom, muttering that she needed space from my energy. In the home office nook, I sat at the laptop. The spreadsheet with initials and dates opened like a quiet, patient witness. I added a line for the school event, another for the pickup with Ethan, another for the father's comment. I kept the entries plain, no adjectives, just actions and times. Then I opened the folders labeled Archive A and Archive B. Inside were clips, screenshots, exported chat logs with names cropped out, audio notes with dates in their titles. I checked that the last upload had gone through. A small message appeared again in the corner. File uploaded successfully. I watched it vanish. I took a small USB stick labeled only with a recent date and slid it into a clear sleeve at the back of a binder marked Household, behind electricity and internet bills. Later that week, after putting Mila to bed, I drove to the parking garage under my office tower. It was late enough that most spots were empty. The concrete pillars and low lights made everything feel distant from the bright chaos of our life upstairs. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat in the quiet. Then I put on my headphones and made a call to a contact in my phone whose name was now only an emoji. When the line picked up, I spoke in low, careful sentences about schedules, about living arrangements, about what I had recorded and for how long. I did not raise my voice. I listened as the person on the other end talked about timelines, about the importance of clear documentation, about acting with patience and in the proper order. Words like process, temporary steps, and stable arrangements floated through the static. No loud declarations, just structure. When the call ended, my phone showed a new entry in the recent list, nothing more. Back home, Sienna was on the couch with the television glowing and her phone in her hand. She said she was tired of my silent treatment, tired of feeling investigated, tired of having to justify every move. She said if I really could not accept her dancing with her ex, then maybe I should be the one to leave so she could breathe. She spoke like she was offering me a favor. I stood in the doorway and felt something inside me settle, not break. I realized I did not have to win this argument or any other one. I only had to finish what I had started quietly. I walked further into the room and stopped at a distance that felt safe. I told her, in a calm voice, that I was done talking in circles. I said I would not fight with her in front of our daughter anymore. I said whatever needed to happen now would not be decided in our living room or in group chats. I told her I would handle things properly. She asked what that meant, but I did not explain. At that exact moment, my phone vibrated in my pocket. The screen lit up with a calm reminder. Meeting. Personal, set for the office lobby at 9:15 on the red-circled day. On the wall behind her, the planner caught a bit of light, the small sticky note bring forms lifting slightly at the edge in the same draft. 2 quiet signals answered my promise without words. I dismissed the alert without breaking eye contact and understood that the collecting phase was over. The next step would be the one where paper, not arguments, would speak. The morning of the red-circled day, I left Mila with my mother and told her I had paperwork to do for our future. Then I walked into the office tower lobby and stood by the benches, hands in my pockets, watching the elevators. Sienna arrived a few minutes later, phone in her hand, ready to clear the air and fix the story one more time. Before she reached me, a neutral man in a plain jacket stepped between us, spoke her name, and placed a thick envelope in her hands. She opened it, saw petition for divorce, temporary orders, custody schedule, then looked up as the elevator bell chimed.